The Credit Show podcast with Harry Jacobs starts now.
Call I get periodically is one that, has to deal with the passing of a friend or a relative. I got a call last week from a woman who was in her 80s, and she had just lost her brother, and she was obviously upset. It was a sad phone call, but she was deeply confused about what to do and how to handle the situation with her brother's creditors and the credit bureaus and all of that. Now, there are a couple reasons to get on top of this. Obviously, ID theft is not just an issue or a thing for those that are alive, but among the deceased as well. That people search obituaries looking for people with, that have recently passed that they can go and try to steal their identity. Right? There are two things that need to be done when someone passes away. The first is the creditors all need to be notified right away to close accounts. And you as a relative, someone that's getting in the middle to help, aren't liable for these accounts, by the way, that someone else had. You're a brother, you're a sister. They're not yours. The only exception is, if you're in a state that is a community property state, you are responsible for the debts of your spouse. Either way, whether they're alive or they're deceased. Either way, I just want to run through the process and what you need to do. In terms of the creditors, you've got to contact the credit card companies and any finance companies that your loved one had a relationship with and ask them what they need in terms of additional info after you let them know they passed. Obviously, closing out the accounts is going to be the first order of business. Now, they may or may not ask you about a final bill, what you plan to do with it, and obviously the less information you give from that perspective, the better. You can tell them to forward whatever they want to forward. You can say that you're not sure, and it's okay to do that, again, unless you're the spouse, in which case it's your choice to leave the account open and to get the bill paid and, business as usual, so to speak. But just, be clear on that. Now, what this woman had called me was nervous about was that the credit card company she spoke with asked her for a little bit of information, her address and her phone number. Didn't ask for anything beyond that, but she was scared because she didn't know if she could give that information out safely, right? You don't know who to trust, and I don't blame her. It's always fine to do that, by the way. They weren't asking for her social. They weren't asking her if she was planning on taking responsibility for her brother's debts or anything like that. But it's just confusing, and it's a lot, and she just lost her brother. So it's always a lot when someone passes away. So just give them the information that's basic and generic, and that's okay. And one of the things, by the way, they may ask for, if you're calling to alert them to a death, they may actually ask you for a copy of the death certificate, and you can absolutely provide that. Don't worry about your own identity through this process. Obviously, you don't need to provide your social or anything about you. Just, keep that in mind. The other thing to think about is the credit bureaus. The other group of people that need to be contacted is that group, those three bureaus, TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. This is going to require a little bit of information gathering by you. If you're not the spouse, right? You've got to go and find some documentation that proves this person was this person who is deceased. A driver's license, utility bill, photocopy of all those things, plus the social. Copy of the death certificate. Should be sent to all three bureaus. Now, generally, the rule of thumb has been that if you send it to one bureau, they'll notify the other two. I think you got to be thorough and send it to all three. Just include a short note. Let them know who you are, but let them know that you're forwarding information on the passing of your friend or relative. Right? If you're listening to this and you're kind of thinking to yourself, I got to take some notes on this, or I need to access this information again, I'll make sure that it gets put up on the podcast. Just make sure that you get into Apple or Spotify or iHeart, wherever you get podcasts, and punch in the Credit Show, and you'll see something in there very shortly about what happens if someone is deceased, what to do about their credit. So we'll get that up there for you. If you've got questions, feel free to call.
You've been listening to the Credit Show podcast with Harry Jacobs. If you need assistance with your credit, text CREDIT to 702-778-2000.